when you read the Bible, right? I'm going to read the Bible. Okay, I want to know what the authorial intent is. Question, the authorial intent of the person who's writing it, physically, or the authorial intent of God behind that authorial intent?
Right, God.
You know?
When you read the Bible, you said?
Yeah.
You want to know what God really is saying.
That's what I'm thinking. This is what you really want to get to. What critical exegesis does, I think, is try to understand this. Okay, how did Paul understand this, and what is Paul? Okay, but aren't there different levels to authorship to this?
Well, I agree. That's what I was going to ask you. In the second aspect of his understanding, Schleiermacher, he says you're trying to understand authorial intent, basically. What is the author getting at?
Right.
But with art, and that's what I was going with, like with art, it's always going to speak to you individually.
Yeah.
And that's how I look at the Bible. Like, isn't it supposed to speak to you where you're at individually, different for everybody? I mean,
Sure.
you know, it could change. It could even move everybody towards the same direction, but still, it's going to speak to you.
Absolutely. Because your interpretation is going to be different. And this is what's kind of neat. Does that mean, it certainly means this. It means that you can find a meaning in the text, right, that goes beyond this author's, this is the human author, right? And this is God. And let's even imagine, let's get crazy with this. Let's imagine that God is the author behind certain myths, right? You know, universal myths that tell you something about the human condition. So, when we critique it and when we read it, and here's, how should I draw this up? On this level, here's what Aeschylus said. You know, here's Oedipus the king. And Oedipus thinks he meant this. But we can critique this and say, well, Oedipus isn't aware of this kind of stuff that went into his writing of Oedipus the king. He had never read Freud. Freud gives us an insight into the idea of the unconscious, and we can say, well, our understanding today, as we're the critic from the outside looking at this, and our understanding goes beyond the author, the human author, Oedipus' understanding of Oedipus the king, because we've read Freud and we have a different perspective of it. Just like when we read Paul, our understanding can go beyond Paul's understanding, yeah? That you don't want to understand just what Paul said, but you can find things in the text that Paul was oblivious of, but yet he was still the author of it, right? But of course, when you go to this level, God doesn't have an unconscious. Are you really finding things, when you discover things like you're the critic who reads Oedipus the king through Freud, and you discover this deeper layer that, you know, Oedipus just thought, no, I'm telling you the story about the king. No, you're really talking about the Oedipus complex that's universal within us. All little boys want to kill their father and marry their mother. And Oedipus goes, what are you, nuts? Haven't you ever read Freud? No, he dies 2,500 years before Freud. Okay, but we can understand that. So are we actually getting to that deeper level? When a critic, like what you said, Wendy, when you view a piece of art and it speaks to you, it might speak to you in a way that it didn't speak to the human artist, but did it speak on a deeper level? Or is it embedded within that art on some kind of deeper level? Like the artist didn't know. I remember when I was an undergraduate, I forget who the professor was that used to say it all the time, but he used to use the phrase, the voice the speaker doesn't hear. You know, you ever have somebody say something and you go, that's it! And they go, what's it? What did I say? What did I say? And they said it, they don't understand it, but you understand it. It resonates with you, right? So what Schleiermacher is starting to bring us into is the idea, of course he's pre-Freud, and he doesn't understand that level of authorial intent. But he's understanding that there is an expression that goes beyond the words, and maybe even beyond the understanding of the human author, right? And that's what I don't understand when people talk about biblical exegesis, and they say, well, what Paul meant by this was, okay, but who cares what Paul meant? God's ultimately behind this, isn't he? Isn't there stuff beyond what Paul meant? You know.
But it's also everything belongs. You know, it's necessary. It's both, because really, slavery, women shutting their mouths. You know, there's an aspect of understanding the times and blah 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 and the culture. But ultimately, what do you want to get to? You know, so it's important to understand that, but at the same time, it's not the ultimate end.
Sure. And just a point on that. We were talking about this in the last class. How can you think? No, the biblical revelation, God bypasses this. God just goes around this and right into their heads. And Paul, okay, God, you got to change Paul. You got to stop him from being a sexist, so he won't. No, he is come on, he lives in a sexist society. How do you avoid that? How do you avoid that? That's got to be part of his interpretation.
Exactly.
Good. No. This is pure God. It's no human. Oh, come on. That's just so unlike God. It's like Locke's line, you know, God doesn't unmake the man when he makes the saint. He's going to create the likeness of his son in sinful flesh. You know, he's not going to, if God had to straighten up our understanding in order to, well, he'd never get this thing started, you know. He deals with our screwed up understanding and meets us in that screwed up understanding. And people want to say, no, this is like math. This is just pure I told you about Ed Weinberg saying, it's pure dictation. I know it's pure dictation into a screwed up understanding that produces their interpretation. When I say something to you, you don't hear what I said, you hear what you understand. I told you my ex-wife, she had intro, and she was an adult student, so she was, you know, and she got a 96 on the midterm exam. She was all pissed off there. 96. No, wait a second. This is right. I got you on tape. That's exactly what you said. It's not what I said. I said this. Well, it's the same thing. No, it's not the same thing. It's okay, but this one over here. I know I got, you know. No, and I know you studied for 11 hours, and you think you understand what I said, but you didn't. You didn't. That's why I'm always so interested in intro. Today I started talking about the kinds problem. And I said to him at the beginning of class, this is the hardest thing I have to teach, because it's what I've been thinking about for 30 years. And I think about it every day, all day long, and you started thinking about this 37 seconds ago. And how am I going to get back to what you must be hearing? And I say stuff that I think is so simple and so obvious, and I gotta, no, this is completely foreign. This is completely foreign. You're still under the impression that, no, when you see what's out there, there's a black person, there's a white person. You see that. No, you don't. No, you don't. That's what you bring to the experience. And when God speaks to you, no, God speaks audibly to me. I don't care if it's audible or, I always ask people when they say that, God spoke audibly. Really? Who else heard it? Nobody. Then how'd you know it was audible? You know? I can remember saying to my ex-wife, did you just say to me? She goes, no. Oh, I imagine that you said that. You've had that experience?
Yeah.
You know? Okay, and when God has spoken to me, it wouldn't have been any more real if it was audible. If there were human words, they're always ineffable, but you just know, you're just in that place, you know? Okay, what did he say? You know? It's always beyond that, because the expression, what's trying to be expressed, defies human words. It always goes beyond the human. And if you think you're reducing it, this is the enormous problem. Not just with reading something like the biblical text, but having God experiences. And this is how I know it's always a phony. When people say, I had this experience, and it's great detailed, and it's exactly, you know, and they got just the right words. No, that's not how it happens. That's what Jonathan Edwards says. True religious affection, true religious experience are always ineffable. It's always beyond. And if you think that your interpretation of it is identical with it's all coming out of your head. It's all coming out of your head. There's very little coming from the other side. It's all your imagination. you know that it's a mixture of imagination and the God experience when it is kind of ineffable, when you can't put words to it. Why? Because my understanding that I'm bringing to it is not capable of really interpreting this. I mean, I have to interpret it somehow. I have to put words to it. But I realize the words are always, you know? And that's the best the divine revelation can be. That's why if you read Revelation, the way you should be reading it is not as an objective revelation, but as John going, look, it's like a, you know, that's why Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like here's a parable, here's something I can, you know, and he makes up these stories to try and explain this, you know. Well, just tell us what it is. I can't. You don't even understand earthly things. How are you going to understand heavenly things? You have to use metaphor. You have to use, you know, I always tell you the story about the balloon. You know, I had the dream of the balloon and the finger, and I tell my wife, and she goes, wow. And I said, now, that's not what happened. You're lying about a dream you had. No, I'm not lying about it. It's just that it wasn't a balloon, and it wasn't a finger. Well, what was it? It was like a balloon and like a finger. I don't know. It's ineffable, yeah? Because human words are so limited, and our understanding is so limited. And when you think that your understanding is real clear, you know, systematic theology, it's all in your head. It's all in your head. Barth says, I teach a course called systematic theology. That's like saying wooden iron. It's a contradiction. How can you have a systematic understanding of an infinite eternal God? And when you create a systematic, you know, doctrines, whatever, you got to know that's in your head. You're worshiping your own understanding. That's not this. And I just told the story in the last class. I'm not going to go into it, but about Ron Walborn saying, you're trying to get rid of doctrines, and I mentioned that. He goes, no, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. But the idea, what he said to me was, once you get your doctrines, then it limits the kind of experiences you're going to have. Your experiences are always going to match up with those, and you reject anything that doesn't fit with that doctrine, and you're really worshiping your doctrine. You're worshiping your understanding. That's not the biblical God experience. The biblical God experience, the people in the Bible don't say, okay, now God, if you come to me, it has to be, here's the way it works. Because I know the only ones that do that are the Pharisees. They know exactly how it works. And they rejected Jesus' experience because it doesn't fit with their understanding. But the people that really do have God experiences are wide open to all sorts of wacky experiences. Well, the donkey told me, you know, that donkey told you? Well, it was something like a donkey, you know.
But don't we all do that? Like, you have a doctrine, whether it's, like, you know what I mean? And so we have to do that. Until our experiences no longer fit in with our doctrine, you know, then we have to create a new one.
Absolutely. I mean, I've spent all my life creating philosophies and doctrines and theologies, but they have to be plastic. So the experience, and this is how the hermeneutic circle and the hermeneutic spiral get started. So the experience can change that understanding. And then when you come back, you have a new experience. The same text gives you a new reading. If Schleimacher's idea that all readings are misreadings, so all future readings are beneficial, but only beneficial if the reading is changing your understanding. If not, then the future readings are just confirming your prejudices. And they just, you know, when people say, I read the Bible every day, okay, but does it change your understanding? Are you coming to a better understanding? Or is it just confirming your prejudices? Yeah, that's just, and if it's confirming your prejudices, what that means is that you're not really, this isn't sacred, this is sacred. And you're reading this and interpreting it through these sacred concepts. The concepts aren't sacred. They're the product of your human communities, your language community, your culture, your history. Yeah. The God experience is what's sacred, and that's the thing that should be changing.